This next article that we're looking at is how to pull comparables or comps for market value calculations. How to pull comparables or comps for market value calculations. Basically, in order to be able to calculate market value within Investment Dominator, you need to be able to, in your records, you need to be able to, in the offer request, those records that are in pending preliminary research status, you need to be able to look at comparables so that I can actually determine a market value for this property for Carlos Blanco in Lee County, Florida. You can see my offer amount here is 0, which means I have not sent, I'm ready to send him an offer, but I haven't sent him an offer. I need to be able to calculate the market value for this particular individual. Okay. And in order to do so, I need to have a market value that I can put into the calculator. So to ensure that we can actually calculate the market value, there are certain components that must be present for this to work. Number one, the record must be in pending preliminary research status. That is one of the most important aspects. As a matter of fact, I think I'll go back, I'll use this account here to demonstrate this. So under my offer requests, right? One of the first components, it must be in pending preliminary research status. And when I edit the record and I go inside the record, there must be a valid property address, either property address or I need to have latitude and longitude populated for the property. And that is found under the property information section. You'll find the property address or the latitude, longitude coordinates. And then it's good to have a property city, but you definitely need to have a property state and most important, property zip. So the two items, I must have a property address and I definitely need to have a property zip code in order to be able to calculate successfully using Investment Dominator my market value by pulling the comparables. All right, so it is also important if you're going to use Investment Dominator to determine what size is the property. Either you have square footage in here so that Investment Dominator calculates your acreage, or you have the acreage. You don't necessarily need a square footage, but you need this populated as well. So the forms of information, you need the property address or latitude, longitude, you need at least the property zip, and you need what's the size of the property. Because Investment Dominator is going to use this information to now pull up the comparables. The fact that this record is in pending preliminary research status means when I go up here under options, I can now do my market research. If this were not in pending preliminary research, like if it were still in mailed letter 1 status or prospect, and there is no zip code, if there's no property zip code, Investment Dominator does not know how to do market research, so market research is not even going to show up here. But the fact that we have those two, market research shows up, I'm going to use the most common. The most common website to pull comparables is Zillow.com. So I'm going to left click on Zillow.com. What's going to happen is it's going to bring me right into Zillow.com. That's going to show me a few here, but I want to make sure I find the ones that are in my price range. So my next step, once I'm in Zillow.com, is. I'm going to come up here under price and I'm going to type in my minimum. It's $5,000. My maximum is 200,000. So I'm going to make sure that I type that in and I'm going to say done. All right. So it's going to search. Next thing I want to make sure that the only thing I'm selecting is lots and land. And finally, I want to make sure that I don't have a lot size limiting my search. So I'm just going to say any and any for both. So I'm going to get any land that's in my 5,000 to 200,000 range, that's in the solds, and I want to make sure I go back, 6 months could be enough to get a few comparables. If you cannot find comparables from 6 months, you want to go back 12 months, right? At the most. But let's just say I use my 6 month. Now it puts me in this area based on my zip code. And as you can see, I've got lots of choices. My particular parcel is, I believe, my particular parcel is 0.25 acres. So it's basically a 1/4 acre parcel. So I want to look for any parcel that's close to that in area. If I were to go back 1 year, I believe I'm going to see some more. Yes, I definitely will see some more. And as you can see, I can just scroll through. And as I come to the acreage that match my acreage for solds, right, I can determine a possible comp amount. So I might look at something like this as 0.27 acres. That's close to 0.25. Or I may look for something that says 0.25 acres. 0.33 is a little bit higher, but basically I want to try to find some solds. My next step, once I find a comp that I like, let's say if I'm going to use this comp, I'm going to take this address right here. Okay? I want to take this address and I want to go into Google Maps and I want to determine how far this particular address is from my subject property. So I'm going to go and I'm going to use my directions. I'm going to look back in my investment dominator. I find that this is 194 Linder Drive. And I hope that's a real address. We'll see here in a moment. When I type this in, hopefully Linder Drive, yes, and it comes up. I want to select my subject property. And then my next step will be to take this address as it appears in Google Maps. I want to see how far away my comparable lot is from my actual lot. And I have, this is right real time as I'm doing this. So I select the Inverness and I find that this is 21 miles away. So now that's really too far. I don't want to use any comp that's that far away. So that's outside. So I'm not going to even use that comp. This just gives you an idea. Now, let's just say I went through all of these comps and I did not find any that match. I'm looking at all these comps, but I really don't find any that matches, they're not in my area and they're not right the same amount or the same size as my property. My next step is to go to the for sale. I'm going to then go to the listed. Again, all of this came out of Investment Dominator. And I'm going to find, my 0.25 lot. Now, you can, if you like, in terms of your more, You could say any lot size, starting with, the 0 and up to 0.25, right? Let's just say, so we already know that our lot size here is 10,890 square feet. So we can search by that, right? Let's just say 1/4 to 1 acre. Those are the ones we want. So we're going to limit our search, but it helps us to narrow down all of these that are in here. Now, if I do find a listed comp, let's say this 0.25 acre, again, I'm going to do the same thing. I want to find out how far this is from my subject property. So I'm going to leave that one up there, and I'm going to replace the second one here. And if it's 709, let me make sure that is correct. 709 Smith. Yep, that is correct. All right, and I search. And again, this is not a comp I'm going to use. It's way, way too far away. But as you can see, if I found a comp that was in this particular area, I would be good to go, right? These are just a little too far away. But my point is, you're going to try to find a comp that is sold. And if you do, if I were to find out that, let's say, this comp worked, my market value then is going to look like it's going to be right around $5,000. That would be an example of one. Not a very expensive market value. I don't even know what the county has assessed this at. Oh, the county's only assessed it at 7,000. So at least I'm in the ballpark based on the county assessed value. But I'm going to first try to find one that's sold. If I don't find any that have sold, I'm going to go to my for sale, and I'm going to try to find a comparable property that's, within my 1/4 acre range, and it might be this one here. Let's say this is 15,000. However, because this is a listed comp, I'm only going to use 75 to 80% of this $15,000. Let's say if that were one that we're marketing, that I wanted to look at, I'm going to go 15,000, and I'm going to say I'm only going to use 75% of that. All right, which is going to give me a market value of around, 11 grand or so, right, as my market value, which might not be a bad. But I'm not going to use the entire 15,000. Why? Because they always list properties for higher amounts than the actual market value, right? Because they're trying to get as much as they can. And they figure people will come in and negotiate. But that's the way we find comps, using the investment dominator, so that we can then determine what is our market value going to be. So our next step, once we determine we have a comp, is to come and to calculate our offer. And we put in, let's say if we put in $11,500, then Investment Dominator is going to give me my percentages, and I'm going to calculate somewhere between 15 and 20%, somewhere between the 1,725 and the 2,300. And I'm going to determine what my custom offer is going to be. I'm going to go somewhere in between these two amounts, and then I'm going to make sure I hit save to actually save my figures. So those are the steps in order to calculate a market value using the Investment Dominator.